All right, welcome to another guide for KSP for the RP1 installation with Principia. Today I want to make this series of guides a little bit more organized. So you guys been asking like about setting up a Comm-Relay, using antennas, getting a swarm of relays up there, that works and gets communication up and running. And so we want to start with part two and then how to actually get up there, get your satellite where it needs to be, let it stay there. I want to keep this as the other guides, as easy as possible. I want to avoid math at any time possible. I'm not an astrophysicist. I'm not a rocket engineer. I do different stuff. I have a geoscience background. I'm doing IT related stuff, so I might not be up to speed anymore. Forgot a lot of stuff. It's been more than a decade I went to university, so forgive me if I put in slight mistakes. But this shouldn't be as 100% correct. It should just give you the tools that you need to make your missions successful, not frustrating, and use your designs, use your tactics to get up there, and then um, have a little bit of understanding of the mechanics to actually achieve what your space program needs to achieve to move on. So where do we start? Where do we want to start? So the first thing we need, and I promised a tutorial about that, a guide about that on how to design rockets, but the more I think about it, the more complex it gets. So, but you will probably already, like, if you're looking and watching this guide, you probably already have a rocket that can get up there. So you need a rocket that's capable of delivering a certain amount of payload to geostationary or geosynchronous orbit. And the question is, how much can you get up there? And this is what governs the next. So if you can get like 350 kilograms up there or 3.5 tons, that's completely up to you. But with that in mind, with the weight limit in mind, you need to design your comm satellite. So you have your weight limit, get the antenna in there. I already did an antenna guide. I will do a new one, especially with the addition of Scopus to the new RP1 installations and the career, where you actually need to have working comm relays up there to um, get your contracts working, and they are infinite contracts, so to say. They don't never stop. So you have to get your relay up there. And there's a little bit more antenna stuff in there. There will be a little bit of math, but it's coming up next. Just keep in mind that you need your antenna to do the job that it needs to do. It just might be your comm satellite to enable you to have complete communication for low Earth orbit. That's up to you, but that antenna needs to fit within that weight limit. And of course, the power supply needs to be in line with the antenna. Now, think about that, the transmission power you have, you need to supply that power to that satellite for a long time. It needs, I mean, you don't want to get your satellite up there every 4 weeks, 6 weeks, new one because your battery runs out. So those are the governing principles. We'll see that a little bit later in the demo on how I did my satellite. It's just for the tutorial purposes. I didn't really put much effort in it. It's bare bone, but it works. So yeah, geosynchronous orbit, geostationary orbit. What's the difference? So basically, both have a period of exactly one day, one serial day, but the geosynchronous orbit is, or the geostationary orbit is actually on the equator, so with the inclination of 0. So whenever you look at it, it's actually fixed in the sky, while if you still have inclination left, the easiest way to explain is your satellite will stay up there, but it's going to do an 8. It's not perfect. It has maybe like inclination of 5 degrees, 10 degrees, or even up higher. Um, it from a perspective from the Earth. So you're looking up at the satellite, and that thing has some kind of inclination. Um, while the satellite itself takes the same time to go around the Earth than the Earth itself. So it stays fixed on that one axis. It's going to shift a bit because of the inclination. And then this satellite, from your perspective, down from Earth, looking at the satellite, it will trace an 8 above in the sky. Uh, why is this different? Why should it matter? Especially if you're like up here and you have a contract where you need to supply like uh, a comm relay up here in northern Russia or down in southern Australia. It, if it's up here, it might not be able to see all the way down there. So keep that in mind when designing a rocket. Are you able to do that inclination change, especially if you're doing a Russian playthrough starting from Baikonur or Vladivostok, having high inclination? You need a lot of delta V to get your inclination down to zero. You will probably extend your orbit farther out than geostationary orbit because it's way more energy efficient up there at like 70,000, 80,000 kilometers of apoapsis on the ascending or descending node to to shift your orbit to 0 degrees. But this is really interesting later down the road if you want to go that. If you start like from Kourou or from Cape, it's a little bit more energy efficient to get it to a geostationary orbit to get down the inclination to zero. But after all, what you want to achieve is you want to have that satellite stay here. You don't want to have it drift like from Australia and like in 3 weeks' time it's over Africa or over America. You want to have it stay there over Australia, look at the koalas and kangaroos, and not watch like some elephants running over Africa. So how do we get up there? Um, Easiest way is to to imagine. Okay, I have a certain like geostationary orbit is a certain altitude of an orbit because this corresponds to the orbital speed I have. The question is, what is it? So, and how to get there. In a ballpark region, I'm going to aim at like 35,786 kilometers of orbit. Um, Fine tune that to an orbital period of a day. And to go there, well, get to a parking orbit, get your rocket up there. You're not gonna go all the way to a circular orbit in one burn. So get your payload, get your rocket, get your set bus up to a parking orbit, and then um, especially early on, if you only have like 2 burns in orbit, burn at the ascending node or descending node. And from there on, I usually do a burn like from the parking orbit with an apoapsis to those 35K. K. And once I'm at apoapsis, I'm going to burn until I have a day of period and an inclination of zero. This is important because then you are at the ascending or descending node. It's easier for you to change the inclination while you also do the acceleration burn to raise your periapsis up. We're going to see that. Might sound confusing, but we're going to see that in the demo how easy it is to achieve both in one burn. Um, Once you've achieved that, you might not really 100% achieve it. You do have to correct, and this is something that I didn't especially mention, like specifically mention within the how you design your satellite, but that satellite needs to be able to maneuver because when you start from a parking orbit and you burn it at your ascending or descending node, um, you probably not are going to end up where you want to be. And so, but now you are at like a geostationary orbit. You're there, but you don't want to be there at that position. You want to be in that kind of orbit, but not at this position. So let's imagine here, and thanks to also here again to Wikipedia for all that wonderful art. Let's say you're in the satellite up here and you're over what is like China, China. But that's not where you want to be. You want to be over Europe. You want to provide like television to Europe, and so you need to shift your orbit to that position. And how do we do that? It's actually quite easy. I know I promise all the time I'm not going to do a lot of math or no math at all. This is going to involve a fair bit of math now to get from this orbit to this orbit, and it's quite easy. You just let your orbit drift, and as in the ballpark region, 4 minutes of orbital period change from that geostationary orbit is gonna correspond to 1 degree shift in your orbit per orbit, so per day, more or less. Um, if your period is going to be longer than a day, your satellite is going to drift westwards from the perspective of the Earth. Um, and if it's shorter, it's going to go faster, and then it's going to go eastwards. That just means that if your orbit is further out, it's going to take you longer than a day to orbit the Earth. If it's a little bit more in, it's going to be faster. So in our case, where do we want to drift? Of course, in this case, we want to drift westwards. So we're going to raise up our period, and we can see here that's probably what is it like? I don't know. Nine. It's like 80 degrees. So you can do this in one correction. So you go like 80 degrees. So that's 80 times 4 minutes. Change your period in this way, and you will get to your desired position in a day, and from there on, more or less a day, and from there on, you raise your period again, or you lower your period again to a day, and you're there. You're actually there. You've done it. Um, Depending on the required change, it's probably not that energy efficient if you just have RCS um, to shift all that in a day. So you probably need a few days for your drift. But as long as you remember, like 4 minutes are about a 1 degree, you're kind of in the ballpark range to know how long your satellite is going to take to the position you want to go to. Well, yeah, that's it for this theoretical part. Let's just look at this in our demo. Okay. Okay, so getting our satellite up into orbit. Um, so this is what we would have in our parking orbit. It's like 3.5 tons to a low parking orbit, and that thing is going to get us to geostationary orbit. So it's the satellite bus up here, quite ugly, I know. And then the satellite itself, we do have our energy production, we have the antennas, um, and furthermore, we have fuel and RCS to do the corrections, to do the drift that we want to do. So trying this out, I'm going to skip all the launching the rocket, how the rocket's going to look like. You probably have figured that out, and if not, that's not the right guide to watch anyways. Yeah, where to go? There you go. So simulate this. So we're going to start in a circular orbit at 200 kilometers, inclination about 28 degrees, should be like Cape inclination. And let's simulate this and see how we get into that geostationary orbit and how we want to drift, or how we do drift to the desired position. So I will be using the tools provided by Principia to work on it. Um, so let's take a look first. So we are here in our orbit, and we can see we have the ascending node, we have the descending nodes here, and from there on we are going to use those as burning points to raise our orbit up. So let's use Principia, and when we want to burn in the Earth's central inertial frame. Once we are up to that desired geostationary orbit, but not to the targeted orbit where we want to be, we are going to switch that plotting frame from Earth central inertial to Earth centered Earth fixed. And why we do this and what it shows, we'll see in a few minutes. Great. So let's plan our first burn. And for that, we're going to create a flight plan. Put the tolerance a bit higher up here. Plan length is a little bit more than a day, at least for now. It doesn't need to be. For the next burn, it does though. So we are going to add a maneuver, and we're going to place this maneuver. We have no active engines. Hold on. We have no signal. So for the sake of tutorial, I don't have any satellites up there providing signals. We want to move this as the first one. So yeah, there we go. We got some signal. There we are. Let's activate that engine. And whoops. So all maneuvers are in the past. So let's rebase, add a maneuver. And then we're going to move our maneuver up to the ascending node. Seems about almost right. Yeah, there you go. And then we are going to go for the burn. So what is it, like 200? Something like this. To see where it actually gets us, we're going to analyze our final trajectory. And we can see, well, that's not enough because the trajectory takes a little bit longer. So we now move this up to a day. And now we can see that the apogee is going to be 60,000. It's way too much. I think we have to move to like 2,400. So ballpark range here already, 2470. And now let's going to tweak this. So it's right now, I don't know if you can see this. So the mean apogee altitude is 36,740. And going back to our orbit, we need 35,786. So let's get this down to 35,786. 35, 400, 500, 600. We're not going to hit that like perfectly. We're going to correct afterwards, but let's. I'm German after all. It has to be precise, right? Um, right. So this is going to be our first maneuver, and let's just execute this. You can use MechJab. I'm using KOS on that. Doesn't really matter. RCS is on. Switch to 0. Run node KS. Let's get the energy production running. Okay, dokie. So while we do that, we can wait until that orbit is achieved. We are going to plan our next burn, and that is the burn that changes the inclination to 0, hopefully, if we have enough delta V left, and also get us to that circular orbit. Excuse me. So we are going to add another maneuver, and that maneuver is going to be all the way up here. Okay, so we have a little shift now of the apoapsis and the descending node. Yeah, still. Right. So from there on, I'm going to do two things. So we first are going to check our orbit. So let's keep it up here. We do have the sidereal period. That's important. And then there is the apogee, perigee, and also our inclination. So we want to get this down to more or less 0, and the apogee here to a circular orbit, or the perigee to a circular orbit. For that we have to burn, and I think on a tangent we have to burn about 800. Nah, more. It's more like, so 4, getting close. Yeah, almost. So let's reduce this a bit. Uh, so let's tweak it a bit. Um, so we do need that one day. We do need that 35,786, and that is where we are here right now. Where you go? So 35,786 ish. Uh, so now we can see the period is almost a day. And then I'm going to change the, oh, I have to, am I missing on the wrong one again? Hold on, let's rebase it. Uh, so 15 minutes. Right. So get this up to a day. There you go. And then gonna shift the initial burn so we get this to a little bit more circularized orbit. Okay, yeah, that should be good. Okay, now we can see that we still have that inclination. And what I was talking about earlier is if you have that inclination and you're fixed over that point, but you're still going up and down, which causes you to, at least from the perspective of the Earth, to bounce up and bounce down, while staying over the same was it longitude, longitude, whatever. So you're gonna stay that here, like over that area, but you're going to bounce up and down, maybe shift a bit left and right, so you track that 8. So for that, we're gonna burn binormal to move our inclination down. So now we have an inclination of only 8 degrees. Let's burn into the binormal direction. More. It's 8, 7, 3, 2. Okay, so we are now almost like 1,800. We still have 2,000 delta V left, meters per second. So that's still enough. So we're not going to make, because we're not really on that perfectly on the descending node, we're not going to achieve those 0 degrees. Since we only have two ignitions, there's nothing much we can really do about that. If you have multiple ignitions, you can go once you're up there, burn binormal on your ascending or descending node again to do the fine grain adjustment there. But in my case, well, yeah, that's bad luck. Only one ignition left. So we need to correct the orbit again because the period went down a bit. So yeah, so we got about a day of period. We got only 1 degree of inclination. Looks good for me. So let's execute that node again. Not again, but like this node as well. So we can see the satellite is going out. So we can also see the antennas here are perfectly within the cone of the Earth. So all the ground stations that are visible from up here, we can actually reach. And then let's just wait for the burn. Let's see where we end up. So is it Indonesia here? Singapore? Okay, yeah. So right now we would have achieved an orbit, geostationary orbit. Let's check where we are right now. So let's close the flight plan. We don't need that for now anymore. Uh, let's analyze our orbit here. So it's 8 minutes and of a period. So we want to reduce that. The question is, how do we work out our orbit properly? And for that, I would change the plotting frame to that Earth-centered, Earth-fixed. So now it's looking kind of funny, but there you can see actually the drift that we are going to do in respect to the surface of the Earth. So since we are now having a longer period, what I talked about earlier, having the longer period, you're going to drift westwards. You can see that here. So for each period, we're going to drift a little bit westwards. And let me go prograde real quick. Yes, the orbit is going to drift a bit here. Once we are prograde, I'm going to decouple the satellite bus. And then have a little bit more power for the RCS to position our satellite. And now to prograde, let's say we want to stay over Singapore. We're in a perfect orbit. All I do now is so let's decrease our period again. Sorry on that. So decreasing our period, orbital period, means that this is going to shrink. And there you are. This is the drift it's going to do because we have like still this 1 degree of inclination. It's going to be up and down. But as you can see here, over the 7 days, we're not going to drift much. Okay, so that's only a day, but that's like 21 days. You can see now how much it's like drifting. Oh. So over 21 days, we would drift to this position in respect to Earth. Looking here that we are over Singapore, let's say we want to stay about like we want to move. We want to have a satellite that connects like Europe to parts of Asia. Um, with that little correction, it would take us like 21 days to get in a position that is almost able to do that. Sorry. Let's increase that a bit here. So from this position, you can see now here. Okay, we're almost like over. What's that part? It's probably like uh, Persian Gulf region where we would be. We could see those ground stations, and then we could have our satellite drift over the course of 21 days. We could also increase that velocity and then have it over a course of less periods. That's up to you. That's also up. Final, like the last say is your RCS fuel. That has the last say on how much cycles you need to get in that position. That time compression then rolling. I'm gonna just match the shape here. I kind of like it. Okay. So we're still over Singapore, and then after 3 days, so we want to go for like 25 days now. 24 days. Yes. But you can see the Earth drifting, right? Underneath. So after 13 days, we're like now above India. And this is basically how you position your satellite in your desired orbit. So let's say like we are staying above here, so we can see some ground stations here on the European part, and we can also see some ground station on the outside here, like Vladivostok. So delete that. We don't need that no more. Oh, okay. We messed a bit with the inclination, as you can see here now. So we're gonna track that position, but we should stay fixed over India. Let's do the test real quick. So advanced surface sundown execute. That's gonna mess with the orbit anyways a bit, but yeah, we still have a bit of a drift. Let's try to get rid of this. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that looks good. Uh, yeah, drift looks good. So let's put in we're in 14 days. Let's give it some time compression here. 21 days. Ooh. So it's now 34 days and we're still over India. And we've achieved an orbit that can keep us stable for quite a while. Maybe like once a year or so, you want to check how far your orbits have drifted, especially if you only go like for like 3 satellites on your Comm-Relay. But those are the tools that you need to get your satellite up there and to keep it in the right position. and then you just have to do it like other 2 or 3 times for your network to be complete, encompassing the Earth, and you're done. I really hope that helped. If there's anything else you want to see or have questions, just leave it in the comments. Yeah, like and subscribe. And that video was sponsored by me not giving a fuck.